G'day and welcome to the GameDay Squad NRL Fantasy Show. Usually it is Stu and I, the Fantasy Bros, but today I am hosting all by myself. Unfortunately, Stewie has succumbed to Cyclone Alfred and the devastation that happened around Brisbane, so he is unable to join us for the show today, but instead I have two very special guests. Firstly, I have JT, or as a lot of the GDS coaches know, Fire Breathers. Welcome, JT. How you going, mate?
I'm good, Quasi, mate. Looking forward to the show, and it's great to have Rugby League back on GDS for another season.
Unreal, yeah, definitely. And then joining us as well is everyone's favourite GameDay Squad member. It is GameDay Tom. Tommy, welcome, mate. How are you going?
I think I got a bit lost. Wasn't this the Aussie Rules recording? Maybe I hopped in the wrong studio, but g'day, fellas. Always a pleasure to talk GameDay Squad. And, can't wait to talk about round two. What a great round we just had. And no two better blokes to do it with. So let's get into it, eh?
Yeah, boys, it is Wednesday, so we know what that means. Teamless Tuesday dropped yesterday. Let's take a deep dive into our round two squads. But before we do, let's jump in and have a chat about our round one squads. JT, how did you end up across the four competitions?
After not as good start as some people, especially Son of Chips, I believe, took out all four competitions, which is unheard of. First time I've ever seen it. It was fantastic. It's like must have the same team in every comp. Unfortunately for me, I came second to him in Challenger, but I had top 10 finishes across every competition as well. Nice. I think I may have just popped Stewie actually in the Challenger one. I think he got third. So, yeah, get a little bit of bragging rights after round one there.
Unreal. And Tommy, you were talking a big game against Stewie when we were down in Sydney there with your Challenger squad. How did you end up there?
Yeah, look, not bad. I made a couple mistakes, let's call it, but I'm not far off. Like, honestly, a one change would have got me into the top 20 for Challenger, but I sit at 46 with 1,271 points. So it is what it is, and then just cracked into the top 100 for the other two. But again, I like to diversify my team a bit across the three comps, and I think I got it the best in Challenger, but I didn't quite just get it right enough. So, yeah, competitive, but looking to do a little better this round, let's say.
Unreal. All right. Let's jump through some admin and let's get into our team. So, look, everyone, don't forget that we'll be coming to you live throughout the season every Wednesday night. So make sure you subscribe to the Fantasy Bros YouTube channel as well as the GameDay Squad YouTube channel so that you do not miss a thing. We'll discuss the all-important start sits of the week and reveal who we're starting in our starter squads. That's a little bit of a change. Usually we talk about our champion squads, but with the new GDS Cup, which we'll talk a little bit about later, and maybe Tom can fill us in a little bit more detail. The GDS Cup, we are focusing on our starter squads because there's some extra prizes at hand. Also, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to all of our other socials. Obviously, we're on YouTube, but we're also on TikTok and Insta. Throughout the season, we'll be posting heaps of reels, etc. So please jump on there. Give us a follow at FantasyBros AU. We'll also have plenty of giveaways throughout the season. It's also definitely not too late to jump in. Obviously, you've missed round one, but there are plenty of opportunities still to win heaps of prizes. If you jump on now, go to the GameDay Squad website or download the app. You can use the promo code FBRL25 and you'll be rewarded with those 3 9-player common packs just for doing so. Plus, you can use either of our referral codes to get even more packs, in addition to the multitude of free bronze packs as well. Those starter packs are super important for that GDS Cup that we've talked about. So our codes are on screen there. And if you are listening to the recording, they are 31Z92QY4 and 5N005JTO. So why wait? Jump in. There's plenty of cash and pack prizes to be won every round of the NRL season. The best thing is if you do have a poor week like I did last week, you can scrap your team and start again, and you could win those awesome prizes. Our weekly Wednesday night shows, boys, we go through the players that we're looking at playing across the 3 positions. So we group them forwards, halves, and backs. So we're going to preview some of the players that we think we might be playing, some of those players we might be sitting for various reasons. So let's jump straight in and take a look at the potential forwards that we are starting this week. Remembering that we have to play 1 hooker, 3 middles, 2 edges, plus 2 on the bench of any combination. So, JT, do you want to kick us off? Who are you looking at as your hooker?
That's almost the hardest position to fill this week. For me at the moment, I've got Brayley sitting in there. I do like what I saw from the first game, even against a very strong Penrith side, and he scored, I think it was 62 maybe points, 63, which was off to a great start. I think 80-minute hookers are very, very important. And there's a few that took that box. J&K is one, and also you got Wade Egan. There's another couple out there as well, but I do like what I saw from Starling, and I think he played 65 as well. He's another very, very good option. But you don't have Grant available this week, and with the rotation of the Dragons, my team was Cook and Little. Little, I think, was the highest scoring hooker last week, actually. But he did that in a long range try. He only played for 23, 24 minutes. On that sort of output, you can usually see him giving maybe 35 points. I don't see him doing top 3 every week. And that then hamstrings Cook as well. So both those hookers are a bit of a void to me, but I'm going Brayley at the moment, unless you change your mind before kickoff.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And just before we continue on and look at who Tom's playing, don't forget, if you are sitting here watching us and you have any questions, please feel free to fire them through on the chat. We've already got a couple of boys here. Sif Kanger was the first one here and thought that he might be able to get a free common pack for the first viewer. I love that. And then we also had PPS joining us as well. Ready for another banger, boys. Let's go. So if you do have any questions about who to play, who to sit, please fire them through and we'll try and get through all of them as quickly as possible. Tommy, so we're kind of looking at Brayley here. JT made a good point about Brayley. Are you looking at anyone else in particular, or are you sticking with Brayley as well?
Mate, I'll tell you what, I'm glad I'm here because this is probably the position I need the most direct help with. There's a lot of options that I'm considering, but I don't really know what matchup to look for. So, I'm glad I'm here because I can get the insight. But who I do have there at the moment, because, of course, you mentioned Storm out, and I feel like most weeks I'm going to be inclined to start Grant just because he's the best in the competition. But I have Cook at the moment, but that might just be because of last year. I know he's at the Dragons now. It's a very different situation. JT just touched on then. So, yeah. Well, I'm going to need your advice here. I know we spoke about Egan, spoke about Brayley. Are you Brayley as well?
Look, I've got Brayley at the moment, but I'm actually tossing up between Brayley and Jeremy Marshall-King from the Dolphins. If we look at JMK's output last week, he played 69 minutes against the Bunnies. He racked up 52.9 points. That pretty much came in all base stats. He had 55 tackles, only one missed tackle, which is pretty good.
Wow.
The important thing there is the 69 minutes was because of a HIA assessment. He went off just before halftime and then came back just after halftime after passing that HIA. So I'm not really sure if he's going to be that 80-minute hooker that we know Brayley and Egan are. But if he is, then I think JMK is a pretty good lock this week, and probably most weeks where you might want to fade Grant or Brayley. So, yeah, I'm a little bit concerned. We've seen Max Plath play a little bit of hooker before. We've seen Kurt Donahue on the bench there that he could come on and give JMK a bit of a spell. So I'm probably going to keep my eye on him just another couple of weeks to see what that minutes distribution's like. But at the moment, you're right. I think I'm just going to stick with Brayley. He has 61 tackles in that Panthers game, which is absolutely massive. That's 61 points there straight away just for tackling. He only had 31 meters, so it's not a lot of running, but we don't necessarily need that from him. The other thing that's really important there is that score that he got had no try assists. And I feel like he could be pretty dangerous this week with Adam Fanua-Blake around him, and even Tom Hazelton when he comes off the bench as well. So, yeah, Brayley or JMK if some of the coaches want to take a bit of a pod risk.
What about any of the viewers? Anyone that's here right now, drop who you're going to be starting at hooker this round. Like, it's a pretty big decision that we're going to have to make, and it could be the make or break of a lot of results on our leaderboards. So drop them and maybe pick a winner to win a pack. So get to it.
Yeah, I just want to touch on Robson really quickly. I was quite disappointed with what I saw from last year. He was, last week. He was a third-ranked hooker from last year. And he only scored 25 points in 80 minutes. His base just didn't seem to be there. His running didn't seem to be there. It was only 42 tackles and 3 missed tackles. He had an error in there as well. So he's just a player to keep an eye on. The way the Cowboys are going at the moment, I can see them doing a lot of defending, and that's another reason why I do like Brayley this week in that matchup.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Robson was pretty disappointing. Obviously, they got absolutely
That was a tough
rolled.
game to watch, just quietly.
Yeah.
For as
Yeah. Sif Kang has made a good point. If we had dual positions, we could put Watson there, but Brayley for him this week. I like that GDS is a little bit different in that we don't have dual positions, because some of those players that are playing out of position, you do get a benefit. And we're going to talk about a couple of those a little bit later on in a couple of the other positions. But Sif Kang, I like where your thinking is with Brayley. All right, let's move on to our middles. And I feel like we've probably got a big three of GDS now, and that's probably Haas, Yo, and AFB. And I think I sort of was a little bit off AFB at the start of the season in the pre-season lead-up, because he was speaking about reduced minutes, etc. But I don't care anymore. He just looked unreal in that game. And Vegas, he looked so good, and so disappointed that he left the Warriors. Boys, are those sort of the big three that you're starting in your middle spot? JT, do you want to kick us off?
Yes, I actually have May ahead of AFB slightly. The main reason is, if you look at both their stats last week, May outscored him. If you take away that try, AFB is known for getting tries, so it might be null and void the way you want to look at it, especially coming up against the Cowboys team this week. But I'll be playing all four of them for sure this week.
Yeah, love it. What about you, Tom? I know you're a big Haas and AFB fan.
I am. I did say before the season, I think they're sort of my set and forget forwards this year, unless with buys and everything, of course, you've got to manage that. But it's crazy what playing alongside Trindle, Hines, and Brayley can do for a forward like Fanua Blake. So, yeah, moved in the off-season. But as you're right, looked like the best player in the field in Vegas, maybe other than Cleary. So he's definitely starting for me. Isaiah Yo's just such a safe floor in points. He just seems to churn them out week in and week out. And he had a try last week. So maybe we see a little bit of a regression because we're not used to seeing him get over the line as often. But I'm still pretty confident in starting him, that's for sure. And Payne Haas is just a freak. And you've got to have a real good reason to bench him on any given week in any matchup. So
yeah. Just looking at the stats, though, it's interesting that Haas only racked up 39 base points, Yo 56 and AFB 46. So in terms of their base, that's running meters and tackles made. So I thought that was interesting that both Yo and AFB had a lot more base stats, but they sort of ended up quite similar across the board there. And then obviously we will talk about May in a moment. But before we do, some people are firing through their who they are starting at hooker. Obviously, a contentious position. We've got Mel. Mel is an unbelievable fan. I believe she started this season, Mel's Misfits, and she's on fire. She's got Cook and Starter, Little and Classic, Phoenix Crossland, which I love as a little bit of a pod in Challenger. He looks to be getting the nod over Brayley with that talk around Brayley moving to potentially the Raiders. And then Reece Robson and Champ. So that's really interesting. She's keen to take a shot on Reece Robson. The other one here is PPS. He's tossing up between Brayley and Damien Cook. And as you touched on, JT, I just don't know about Damien Cook. All reports were he could potentially move to the middle or lock when Little came on, but we didn't see that. We just saw Cook have a spell. And for me, probably his age is he's pushing that mid-30s. Potentially, we just don't have it in Cook anymore to rack up those points like he used to.
Yeah. And on saying that, we saw Couchman go down with a season-ending injury as well. So that even limited the Dragons' rotation, and he still got time on the bench. So with only 3 available forwards, he was just sitting there with Little on the field. So yeah, I think one of them has to be out to be playable on a consistent basis, but both are always going to be great pod options.
Yeah. All righty, you touched on May a little bit, and I just want to talk about him. We weren't really sure what his minutes were going to be like. We talked at this, early in the season, Stu and I, around if he gets 60 plus, he'd just be absolute gold. And the Tigers have sent a pretty clear message, regarding his minutes. The bench again consists of a replacement hooker, Jack Bird, who goes into the back row. Royce Hunt, he played 30 minutes last week. I think he averaged 24 or 25 last season. And then Fainu, who played 15 minutes last week. So May is the clear out-and-out favourite for that front row spot and racking up the minutes. If he gets that 60 plus, he's going to get above 60 points. We know that's going to happen because he's such a PPM, a points per minute beast. And we saw that 66.9 GDS points in 65 minutes. 43 of those were made up from base. So that's tackles and meters gained. So for me, like you said, JT, I think he's a lock, and you might even just go the big four and go Harsio, AFB, and May each and every week, pending buys and injuries, obviously.
Yeah. No, I love that shout. I think they're a safe option. We did see AFB sometimes get maybe a 30 or early 40s last season. Yes, that does happen. And going back to what Haas did last week, yes, his base stats were down. He did score 80 points in 49 minutes. The Raiders are a much bigger forward pack, a better forward pack, I believe, as well. So I think we might see the 55, normal 60 minutes out of him this week. So he should get those base stats back up, and he's not going to be relied as heavily on what he did last week on attacking stats. It's just another element to his game, which we love to see.
Yeah, for sure. All right, the conundrum then is, so we've got our four middles, I guess. We've got our three on the field and one bench. Where are we going with our fifth spot for the forwards? Where's our second bench going? Tom, who are you looking at for that second bench spot?
Yeah, for me, I think I'm looking at an edge for sure. There's a couple really good options, I guess I'm tossing up between. Do you want to mention Maxi? I guess you touched on Maxi Plath. I feel like he'd be a really good baseline in terms of score this year, but maybe he doesn't have that like big upside that you might see from other players who are going to make those big plays. So one that comes to mind, of course, well, he's probably more of a starter, but he's Big David, so I might leave that. I think I'm looking at like a Hosking or even Hudson Young. Like that pairing there interests me there with the Raiders. Both of them had a fantastic debut. Mitchie Barnett, I felt like he didn't even play that well and still churned out 51 fantasy points. Like I can see him really bouncing back. I'm umming and ahhing in all honesty, and I don't really have a lock for it at the moment. So,
JT, are you able to help Tom out a little bit then and suggest a player that he might be able to chuck into his fifth spot?
The player I have isn't even on that list, actually, and it's Connor Watson.
Mm-hmm.
He should be playing 80 minutes. He scored 65 in round one in a well-beaten Roosters team. We saw Brayley succeed against the Panthers. You look at that forward pack compared to last year. You don't have Warrior and Hargraves. You've lost May. You're out without Butcher as well this week. You've just lost Radley from the middle or edge wherever he's playing. He's going to need to do 80 for that Roosters team. There's no question in my mind that he should be. So he's a lock for me at this stage unless I change my mind and get a bit frisky and go for a high upside edge.
Yeah, I like it. And look, on Watson, you're 100% correct. He's a tackle machine as well, 49 tackles last week in that game. And I think, look, he's going to play 80. Pretty much a lock there for that 80-minute hooker role. And the good thing I like about it is he's a middle on GDS, so we can play him in the middle on the field if we want to. So that's a bit of flexibility there as well with that sort of different positioning and the different makeup of GDS versus what's happening in real life in the rugby league. So I really like that Watson call. I'm really high on Watson for most of the season. Obviously, that Roosters team was a bit disappointing, but you're right. They're going to have to do a lot of defence, and that might go through Watson. I'm going to throw another name out at you, and it's someone that I'm looking at, and I thought that it was a bit of a pod, and I know that the moment that I say his name and then he potentially doesn't become a pod anymore, but that would ruin the show a little bit if I kept all the pods to myself. But that's Tommy Gilbert from the Finns. If you ever look at what he did in round one, and you can't sit there and go, he's not an absolute stud. I don't know what you're watching. In round one, he played 56 minutes on the field. He racked up 59 tackles and almost 100 meters. So that's almost 70 points just in base stats alone. He did have then a tackle break and an offload on top of that. He did lose 14 points in demerit. So, we're looking at missed tackles, errors, penalties conceded, etc. But that's so much more impressive considering it was his first game back in a year and a half, or such a long time for him to be off the field, and was entrusted with that 56 minutes straight up. I think is unreal, and the absolute tackle machine that he was getting the job done and almost secured the win for the Finns. The other thing I really like is across 2022 and 2023 when he started, he averaged over 60 minutes per game. with a number of games there going over 70 minutes. So if we can sort of see him move back to that 70-minute, 65-minute role, I think he's just going to be absolute gold. And I think he's no longer a pod for me, because I feel like I may have convinced a few people to play him. But I think he's too good to not look at.
Nice.
No, I agree with that one totally. There is one other player.
PPS.
Oh, sorry.
Looks like PPS has agreed with me as well. Sorry, JT, continue, mate.
There is one other player that we really haven't touched on too much so far, and that's Corey Horsburgh. The way I like him this week is Tuffney is now suspended for 2 weeks. He played 59 minutes in the round one against the Warriors. I can see that being near 65. In that 59 minutes, he scored 49 points. I think you can see an easy 7 to 10 more base points out of that man. So you're looking at a 55-plus point scorer. If you used to cross over a meat pie or have a few more tackle busts, you could see him getting north of 70 points. So I think he's a real good put option and should be on people's radars.
Yeah, and I like that he sort of tried to free the arm a little bit and get an offload there as well. I did read something today that he came out and said that at the end of last season, he just got fat and he didn't care about footy anymore. And then he had a really good conversation with Ricky Stewart and he's turned himself around and he's back focused. So I think that, pretty keen to see him. Yeah. He looked good. And as you say, if we get a few more minutes out of him, I think that would be an awesome opportunity as well to score some points. So, yeah, there's a few options there.
Sorry, he's having a few too many off-field meat pies. Needs more.
Yeah, I love it. All righty. So I don't know if that helps you, Tom. We've thrown out a few names there, mate, or anybody else. But
just added to my list. Thank you.
You've got a few different options there, and I think in one of those somewhere there will be a potential point of difference for a few people to play, whether that's a Horsburgh, whether that's a Barnett or a Watson, or even my man in Tommy Gilbert. Again, let us know who you are playing and some of the reasons why in the comments. Alrighty, let's jump over to our edge forwards, our back rowers, and we're going to start with, I think potentially it's Tom's favourite player of all time. Am I fair in saying that, Tom?
Well, there's a couple good nominations here, but mate, yes, I do think that this would take the cake.
You touched on his name before, but let's talk about David Fifita. He has been benched. He is coming off the bench. Does that scare you away at all, Tom?
Look, it definitely does, because obviously it's not ideal. You sort of want Fifita on there because I think minutes is already a bit of a debate you need to have internally with him, because he's not going to be playing them all. So how many will he get? Just the thing with me is that when he does play, all it takes is one play for him to become a top scorer in any given round. He just seems to have this knack of when nothing's on, he creates something out of nothing and will just churn over the points, get a try or the assist. And there you have it. You've gone from sitting in our match center, being like David Fifita's only on 10 points, head scratching, to be straight up to about 40, and he's right up there with the top. So it is cause for concern. I am interested in why sort of they're taking that approach, but I've got him in my squad at the moment, so I don't think I'm scared enough to not start him. Although there are so many other good options, and two of my other favorite players that we'll talk about soon.
Yep, awesome. JT, do you agree with Fifita? Are you starting or sitting this week?
I'm sitting this week. I'm nervous about it. I'm not going to lie. To start off the season, when he came back from injury, he started off the bench. And over those games, he averaged 64.7 points in GDS. That is elite. There's no second question about it. The thing I don't like really at the moment about that is this is the first game of the season. I'm trying to figure out how it's going to work back with Tino back in the rotation, a fit Jolliffe as well. They've got a lot more personnel in that forward pack. We've seen Fifita go missing, as Tom mentioned at times. Like he might have a quiet 20 minutes. He might be sitting on 1-2 points at halftime. 1 minute to halftime, or suddenly sitting on 55 points at halftime. He's that 50-point player that can break open the game completely, and he is a GDS coach's dream. Well, we said first game up, possibly. It's against a good defensive team in the Dogs as well. So I would like to see how this rotation works before I might pull the trigger on it. However, at the moment, I don't have any players playing on Sunday in a couple of my squads. I might like a bit more skin in the game, so I might be flirting with him or Preston as the weekend goes on.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do we have
It's always tough watching. No, we're all good at the moment. It's tough watching a game without anyone playing in your fantasy squad. For me, I am actually going to play for Fafita, and I'm quite happy to hear that people are not. As you touched on, JT, he did come back from injury last season, played those 4 games last season off the bench, averaged 60 minutes from the bench in those 4 games, and did average 65 odd GDS points across those 4. He had 43 in base stats. So I know you don't pick him for his base stats, but that was quite surprising that he still was racking up those base stats as well. We know how devastating he can be. Tom spoke about that and how quick he can score points, particularly those attacking points. Yeah, for me, I'm concerned if he doesn't come on the field and move to the left side, although it probably doesn't matter too much. But I like the left side attack against the Dogs. They allowed 50 GDS points to all left side attackers last week. So there's an opportunity there for Fafita to go big on that left side attack for the Titans. So I expect big things from Fafita, and I'm not scared off from him starting from the bench. So that just adds to the likelihood that he might be a pod. Although Mel sounds like she is going to play him. He won't be on the bench long, and he'll make the most of his time in the game. So let's hope that is the case. Alrighty, PPS has asked a question, and I think this is perfect time to move on to that player. What do you boys think about Kalonga-Matangi? So he had a pretty good game last week. He scored 64 up against the Dolphins last week. Is that someone that Tom, again, you were looking at playing with Fafita, over Fafita? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I actually played Kalonga-Matangi last week. He's another one of my favourite players. I actually recently acquired a Queensland versus New South Wales card of his in anticipation for the season. I think he's in for a good one. So Kalonga-Matangi, I feel like there was some concern about sort of the role, what he was going to do and play, but he definitely passed the eye test. He's a bloody beast, is the way to put it, and he plays so well. So that spine's really interesting at the Rabbitohs at the moment. New coach, there's a lot going on there, a lot of change, but I'm pretty optimistic about the season that he's going to have as a whole. I can see why maybe people are hesitant this round with a lot of good options, but for me, I'm getting him in there. I thought last week was a really good start to his season, and I'm expecting a lot more of the same.
JT, what are your thoughts on Kalonga-Matangi?
Yeah, I second what Tom said there. I was a bit nervous of what I saw in one of the preseason games. He got a couple of meat pies in one of them, bumped up his score. He didn't know what his role was going to be. But his role does look pretty secure at the moment. He looks to have shed a little bit of weight as well, and he looks a bit leaner than he did last year. But I think there's just so many good options, and I will be playing him in some of my squads, and some squads I won't be. But I think it's this is the sort of position in GDS. You can take a few shots on and have a bit more variety across your 4 different squads. And that's the difference between, like, you've got Fafita, you've got Kalonga-Matangi. There's a few other players that will likely be mentioned shortly as well. But, yeah, I won't be playing him in every squad, but I'll be definitely trying to get a piece of that action as well.
Yeah, and as we said, Kalonga-Matangi, 64.8 GDS points, included 46 in base. And the thing I liked about it, and we talk about missed tackles and tackle breaks, they obviously are the big ones for us that I look at. A tackle break, 3 points to their score, and a missed tackle -3. So I kind of look at the ratio of tackle break to missed tackles, and he had a 3-to-1 ratio of tackle breaks to missed tackles. So he's scoring a lot more through the tackle breaks and less obviously losing from the missed tackles. So I really liked that ratio from him. And I think his score could have been a little bit higher there. I believe there was a try taken off him that looked like a bit of a slam dunk, and that the bunker got involved and it was a little bit of a joke as a result of that. So that score could have been a lot higher for those coaches that took the punt on Kalonga-Matangi. The other thing, he matches up against the Dragons side that allowed only an average of 43 GDS points to the starting edge forwards last week. but they did allow a massive 74.4 points to Tupanua when he came on and played sort of that middle, both sides of the field role. He didn't really have a set role. He just sort of popped up everywhere. So that could be quite dangerous if Kalongamatangi does have that sort of role. We haven't seen it yet, but there's a potential for him to have that. So that'll be really interesting. I think like you said, yeah.
I just want to cut in quickly. I've just had a quick look at the 2024. I know it's last season. There are a lot of similarities in both squads and that. But I just want to point out that the Dragons were the worst defending team against the right edge, if that's where he ends up at 49 points on average. And going back to the left edge, where Fifita played, the Bulldogs allowed an average of 51.1 points to that position, which was the worst in the whole competition. So those two players that we're playing against, I've just been talking about, they look like to have very favourable matchups going by the 2024 numbers. But I know that's the history. We've got a new season, but it's just something to keep in the back of the mind. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love that. That's some great stats there. And yeah, like you say, it's last season, but we can only go off probably last season, and we've only got that small sample size of one game at the moment in terms of those stats. So we're going to use whatever we can to try and justify our selections. The second player for me that is a lock for me, and then my toss-up is going to seem to be Kalongamatangi and Fifita, is Hamali Olakau'atu. I think he is a bit of a beast, and there's going to be a bit of a theme as I talk about some of the players that I am starting in my starter squad this week, and will probably feature across most of my squads. And that theme for me is targeting the right side attacking teams against a weak left side defense. And Holy Moly is one of those massive right side attackers coming up against the absolute rubbish of a Warriors defense on the left side that allowed the Raiders absolute field day in Vegas. The Warriors allowed an average of 60 GDS points to both Raiders edge forwards. Yes. And that is just absolutely horrible. Look, there's an argument there about the Manly Sea Eagles not being great away from home, but I don't think it's going to matter. I really don't know what the Warriors are doing in terms of their selection, and in terms of their playmakers, in terms of their defensive work, but it's just not going right, and we saw that in that round one game. Is Olakau'atu an absolute lock for you, JT?
Yes. I've got him across every squad at the moment. And as you touched on, that Warriors left edge. Yes, capable. He's an experienced player. He'll be defending there on the left. But just that right edge from Manly with Turbo sweeping around the back as well. You've got DCE. Well, look at how they scored last week. You had DCE, you had Garrett, they had Saab. Everyone scored over 55 points and above. Saab might have just been under that. But that just shows you how they like to go right down there. I'm hoping because Cooler went off for a little while. But I can see them targeting that, which isn't good news for the likes of RTS out there on the left, which is, I think they're going to be, feeling a bit sore on the Saturday, and I'm going to actually going to be heading on to that game. So hopefully they can step it up and put in a good showing for the faithful at Mount Smart.
I think you might have to have a few beers before you go down there to make yourself feel better in that game, mate. Tommy, no doubt. Tom, is that the other player that you were playing in your edge forward spot?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the three edges that I was going to play, and that's the current or my last bench spot. So when we were talking about that mid forward before, I wasn't exactly sure, but the Fifita, Kalongamatangi, and Olakau'atu, I'm pretty big on this season, and I did start two of them last week, but I just can't. Of course, Fifita was out, but I just can't reason to not put Fifita in there. And although there are some really good candidates that you guys touched on in those mid forwards, I think as an upside player, I probably need to play that a little bit more than other coaches. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to roll with it, and they'll be my three edges that I'm starting personally.
Yeah, I like that. And the other thing I like is last season, again, obviously, it's not a true indicator, but last season, Olakau'atu had 11 tackle breaks against the Warriors in that game that they played. So if he gets anywhere close to that, I think he's going to be one of the highest.
He had 8 last week. If he gets another try, we just see the same thing again, just churned out. I feel like a massive score and one of the best for the round.
Yeah. All right, there's one player that we haven't talked about that Evan thinks we're sleeping on, and that is Nikora. JT, is that someone that you've got at all across any of your sides? Is Britton Nikora someone you want to bring in, or are you fading him this week?
I've got him in a couple of squads. The reason is what we saw against for the Cowboys left edge last week. And who are they facing? That Manly right edge of Hamoli, Garrett, we just named them. I think they're going to absolutely carve the Cowboys up down that side. When we get to the halves, I'll explain a little bit more there. But I've got Nakora in a couple of sides just because I think they could feast down that right edge. But there is another player as well that I'll touch on after this. But I think with Nakora, they tend to they're still trying to work out their halves combination and how it's going to actually work. Are they going left? Are they going right? Who knows how it's going to end up on any given day? They've got Molotalo out there on the left. They've got Stone Street on the right. They're just such a well-balanced side. It depends on where they feel to go. But I think they'll see what Manly did to that left edge and be targeting down the right side a bit more this weekend.
Yep, awesome. I like it. So you did say you wanted to touch on one more player. Who was that, mate?
Dylan Lucas. He's my number one this week. I saw what Kolomatangi, I saw what Arrow did to the Dolphins' edges. There was, I think, collectively, they were the worst team against the edges of the whole weekend. We saw 65 and 70 points respectively, or 72 points respectively to those two positions. That left side of the Knights just looks absolutely deadly. It can shred teams apart. You've got Sharp looping around. You've got Ponga cutting in. You've got Best, who needs to learn how to pass the ball a bit more. And you've got a great finisher out wide with Marju. The only downside on that matchup that I don't really like is Herbie in the centres, and he is as solid as you can get as a centre. Will they go left again? I think they should be able to take the risk. They'll find room if Herbie's coming in to cover Lucas. If he doesn't, he might find the gap against someone like Katoa. They might not have the coverage there. We could see meat pie for him.
Yeah, I like it. Awesome. All right, well, we're going to move on now to the halves, and remember, in our half spot, we can play the two on the field and then one on the bench. For me, I think the must starts are still Hines and Cleary. I don't think much has changed there. And I feel like most coaches are probably still going to go that way for a whole range of reasons. But obviously, with the key matchups that the Sharks and the Panthers have, we've already touched on quite a bit. But let's talk about the third potential half. And look, it's no secret. It's there on the screen. I have highlighted DCE. I think I will be playing DCE this week. Again, all of those reasons that I touched on, the Warriors' horrible defense, as well as that right side attack. Is that someone that, JT, you're going to play as well, or is there some other options that you're considering?
I've got him in one or two squads, but I lean to another player a bit more than DCE this week. I do like what you said about the Warriors do look average on attack. I don't know if they just were on the Vegas buzz too much, just decided not to turn up for the game, not 100% sure. But I do expect a decent crowd down there and a big improvement from the boys. Will they get the win? I don't know, but DCE does generally do pretty well, and Manly have done pretty well historically against the Warriors, especially here in New Zealand. So I've got no argument with anyone taking DCE. I do have him in a couple of places, but I do favour another half over him at this stage.
Go on then. Who is it?
Mr. Humphries, come on down. I love what I see from this boy. I liked what I saw at Manly in the one game last year. He's only had 2 games now in the NRL. He scored 75-ish points last week. But what really impressed me, because I watched the game, I know it was only the Charity Shield, which is a trial game. My boys were 28-0 up after about 20-odd minutes. Jamie Humphries came on with about 10 minutes to half-time. All of a sudden, they're within 6 points, something along those lines. He only played 30-odd minutes, and he scored over 60, would have been over 60 points against in GameDay squad points in that game. It's the same opposition. I know Flanagan's had a look at him, but if anything's going to have to go through the Bunnies, it's going to be down their right edge. They're missing Munro. They're missing Whiten. They've got an unknown left edge. Humphries plays on the right. I can see a lot more play going out that side. He had 35 tackles for a half last week. So the base stats are going to be there, 700 kick meters. I think you're looking at 50 points in base alone. And he's the kicker. DC isn't. So I've got him above DCE this week. Not by much, but I think he's a real good pod play.
Yeah, I like that, particularly the pod play, because he wouldn't have too many cards out there available that have been packed with Jamie Humphries. name on it. The other thing that I love is his arms are absolutely unreal. He has massive arms for a half. Those biceps are huge. I could watch him hold a ball all day. Tom, who are you going with your third half?
I'll just touch on Humphreys. Like one thing quickly is, I guess, like you look at the matchups and everything, but I tend to try to not overreact to it's a very different team. So I think it's a little different in this aspect or this instance, with Humphreys. But I'm probably trying to avoid that because I feel like that might be a move that a lot of coaches are trying to make this round. And they looked at because he looked unbelievable. Like, don't get me wrong. There's all the signs to want to start Humphreys as one of your halves this week. But someone that I thought that played really well, and he was on the first day of competition, it was Jamal Fogarty. I think he had a fantastic outing. And I know the Raiders, and he wasn't actually probably involved as much as I thought. I thought maybe for him he had a bit of a quiet game, but he still seemed to just churn out a really good score and have a really good base there. So 59 fantasy points. He had 5 goals. He's doing the goal kicking as well. I just really like that, sort of having those base points, having that opportunity to be able to score there. And, of course, this week they're going up against the Broncos. So probably not as many tries and as many goal-kicking opportunities because it's going to be a tough day out against the Bronx. But I still think with his kicking game that we're going to see a good score from him. And hopefully, if they're going to be in it, it's going to be back a lot of his great play.
Yeah, and like you touched on, the kicking game was massive. 517 metres kicked in that game against the Warriors. So similar to Jamie Humphreys there, he's got the kicking boot for majority of those in-play kicks, which just adds to his base. Fogarty's definitely someone that I'm looking at as well. Like you said, though, the tough thing is they're coming up against a Broncos outfit who was really strong against the Roosters. And obviously, Roosters are, not an attacking team this season like they have been in the past. But the Broncos limited both Chad Townsend and Sandon Smith to an average of 38.6 GDS GDS points. So I'm a little bit concerned about that potential there as well.
For sure.
What I do like, though, if we go to the past few games that Fogarty's played against the Broncos, in the past, he scores really well against the Broncos. For some reason, Fogarty just gets up against the Broncos. Obviously, the one game he didn't was when he had that bicep injury last season in round 7. So I think that's the only time he's had a down game against them. So, yeah, it's definitely an option there and potentially a pod play as well, which we love. Because there's not a huge amount of difference between our teams, particularly if most coaches are playing the combination of Cleary and Hines. So having a potential pod there, and that's the risk you take. If it doesn't come off, it doesn't come off. But if it does, then you're an absolute legend, and you could end up like Son of Chops at the top of each competition.
Well, off the back of that, do you think there's too many coaches that look at something like the performance of Hines last week and maybe avoid starting him and, maybe looking at Cherry Evans and Fogarty as the 2-3 or a combination of any of the halves that we've spoken about? I know you've got him locked in here, but is that something that you can see or you might see coaches doing this round?
Yeah, I think so. I think the tough thing is that you look at Hines and there's a lot of expectation on him coming into the season. There was a lot of talk around he's got a different mindset now, and he had a down year last year, but he still scored quite a lot of points. And yeah, maybe he didn't have the massive game that we expected he would, but you've got to remember it's against the Panthers. And he still, scored a decent amount of points for a half. So I don't think taking that round 1 game into consideration, we can put a line through it and go, yep. Everyone played the combination of Cleary Hines, and for us, we didn't quite get what we wanted. But I think the fact that they're coming up against a pretty hapless Cowboys side who, just did everything wrong. I think that's reason to play him more so than anything else.
This is the bounce back. Yeah, this is the perfect opportunity to get it right for sure.
Yeah.
I second that as well. If it was against another opposition, like maybe up against the Broncos or a Storm this weekend, yes, you might sit him. But just from what we saw DC do against the Cowboys last week, I think it's hard not to start him.
Yeah. Perfect. Alrighty, let's move on to the back. So remember that in our back spot, we've got to play 2 centers, 2 wingers, 1 fullback, and then any combination of 2 of those players on our bench. So there's quite a lot of players there that we could play. We probably won't have time to go through every single one of them, but let's just touch on a couple. So who's the key centre that you are playing this week, JT?
I've got Holmes at the top of my list, just because they're coming up against the Bunnies. It was a close game in the wet last week as well. This is the first game on the Saturday ticket. Hopefully it's going to be dry conditions and we can see more of the game that we saw at the Charity Shield. They do like to go down the left edge as well. With Tuipulotu down there, that's where they had a lot of success, as we can see by their fantasy outputs last week. Yeah. I think he's number one for me this week, but he always makes me nervous, even though I know it's probably the right thing to do. I wouldn't be surprised if he actually lets through 10 missed tackles and might keep me at 25. It's just the sort of player he is. So there's always that if I don't know factor. But at the moment he's in my team, and I'll go double down with another goal kicking centre, and that's Ruben Garrick against the Warriors. Similar reason, left edge Warriors, right edge Seagulls, points maybe galore. Don't know, but I think it's worth taking the risk.
Yep, I love that. Tom, are you looking at anyone else in that centre spot?
Mate, I was going to start with Ruben Garrick only because of the matchup and the goal kicking that he's going to be doing. It's just going to be a really good base amount of points that we're going to see from him, irrespective of what happens in field. And of course, he has the opportunity to potentially get on the end of a couple of meat pies and even boost that score even more. But they're literally the exact two that I'm running and started this week. I've got Ruben Garrick, I've got Val Holmes, both really high upside, but both really involved in their respective teams as well. So I think it's a great play. And I know that a lot of people might have had RTS in round one. I think it's just let's bench him this week and let's come back to this conversation a little bit later of getting him into our squads. But it's probably going to be a tough day in the office this weekend for him.
Yeah, and RTS is another one of those players that is playing out of position in GDS. He's a centre in GDS, but he's playing on the wing, which I do like as well. There's plenty of upside there for him, but I think you're right. Let's bench RTS this week and come back to him a little bit later. I really love those two players, Holmes and Garrick, and there's different reasons why. Obviously, that added upside of the kicking goals just adds to their base stats, but it's both of the fullbacks that are playing with those players. Gutho's obviously gone over to the Dragons, and we know that he loves to favour that left side of the field. So we know that we're going to see the ball going that way quite a lot. And we ended up seeing 3 tries set up, on that side by Val Holmes because of that work that was done on the inside by Gutho, etc. So he had those 3 try assists and 3 line break assists to Tuipulotu out there. So we know that that's a benefit there. As you touched on, JT, it's the downside of Holmes. He has some games where he misses 10 tackles, 15 tackles, and there's all the points disappeared in a moment. But he did only have 3 demerit points in that game last week, so that was good to see. Then on the other side, Garrick, the thing I love to see, which is something we haven't seen a lot, was Turbo actually sweeping over to the right side of the field and getting more involved on that right side. So if that's a particular strategic play from the Manly Sea Eagles and they're going to continue with that, I think Garrick's going to be the beneficiary, as well as, Olakau'atu and Saab then on the outside as well. So I really like those 2 players. I've got another one for you just quickly before we move on to the wingers. And it's a player, once again, playing out of position. And it could be a little bit of a risk because he's playing in a new position that he hasn't really played before. And that is AJ Brimson for the Titans. He's going to be playing in the halves with Jaden Campbell. And that combination on top of the rest of the spine, the potential for feeder, etc., I think it's really exciting, particularly from a fantasy perspective. Look, we didn't get to see what their combination was like last week because they had the bye, but I think I might take a risk on Brimson in my centres, playing at a position in the halves, given, he'll be wearing that 6 jersey for the Titans. He's going to be closer to the ball. He's going to have hands on the ball more often. He's going to be a ball running half. We know that. I don't think we expect anything other than that. And last season, he played 2 games at 5'8", and he averaged just above 50 GDS points, and that was with a try and a try assist there as well in those couple of games. He also made 20 tackles in both of those games. He only missed 3, which is not bad. It's pretty much standard for a half. And then he made 5 and 7 tackle breaks in those 2 games. So I think we're going to see an increase in his scoring output with him moving to the halves, and I think it's going to be super exciting to see.
I like that shout.
And again, it might have been a pod that I've just given away, and everyone's following, or maybe no one is, and I might get up there. Unreal. Let us know in the comments who you are locking in for your centre spot. I'm going to have a bit of a dilemma between Garrick, Holmes, and Brimson in a couple of my squads, I think. Alrighty, moving over to the wingers. Once again, we can play a couple of wingers. And for me, I've got a massive dilemma in 2 Knights players. Again, it's another player out of position in Fletcher Sharp, listed as a winger, but playing in the halves, and then Greg Marju. Boys, can you help me out here? JT, are you playing both of them, or are you fading them both, or is it just one that you're looking at?
I'm fading Marju more than Sharp. Just because you've got Herbie on the opposite side. So you've got that cut-off opposite Best. So we saw the struggles of that combo last week of Best and Marju. He's definitely up there. And I might end up deciding to take him. Just depends on how I feel. But I think Sharp is a little bit safer. It's not that much safer, though. I've just looked into it. He only scored 17 points through tackles, run meters, and, well, he only had 2 kick meters, which is only 0.1. So it was only 17 points he earned through those 3 metrics, and the rest came through attacking stats. So he is an attacking half, really. It depends on how they want to target that right edge of the Dolphins, and if they do. If they don't, then he might be in for a quieter game if they decide to go down the other way through Gagai and Schiller down that side. So I'm really unsure on my second winger at this time. I've gone Sharp because he scored well last week. I just need to delve into it a little bit more. I might end up with Marju, or I might end up with someone else. Asako scored really well last week, but I just don't like that matchup either at this stage. So Sharp's in there for now, but I could be swayed by another player if I come across some gem.
Yeah, and Tom, did you have any insight then for a gem for JT, or are you going to stick with either Sharp or Marju paired with one other player that we'll talk about in a moment?
Yeah, look, I think Sharp playing out of position and the role that he has is just a must start at the winger spot, because wingers can be so volatile in terms of their scoring. And I think it's one of those positions where you really are having to dive in and look at the matchups and look at the weaknesses of particular teams and really sort of deep dive into where those areas of opportunity are going to be. But where you sort of really don't need to do that as much is for someone like Sharp, who's going to be playing with the 6 on his back. So he's going to have a really good opportunity to score weekly, irrespective of the matchups. Of course, there might be some weeks where we go and target 2 other wingers just because it just makes sense. But one of the people I think we're about to talk about is the other half. I'm going to skip on Marzu only because I think Brian To'o could be one of the highest scoring players in the competition this week. And I might just kick it off only because the Broncos last week against the Chooks put up 50 points. And you think Penrith are coming in off a really strong outing in Vegas against a great team in the Sharks, mind you. And they're going to come into this To'o's first game of the season, and he could be on the end of a lot of gimmies and just literally putting the ball down. The Roosters last week, I think, were a bit stunned, and they looked like they started the game and were just in a bit of shock at times, just couldn't believe that the ball was just never going their way. And I think To'o has an opportunity to capitalize this round and be one of the best wingers. So I'm going that 2 pairing, Sharp, To'o. I think it's easy for me this round.
Yep. JT, are you in a similar boat?
That's what I've got in most squads at the moment, but I have put Sam Stonestreet in a squad as well.
Okay.
That is just that left edge, Cowboys, right edge, Sharks combination. Solely because of that, I think we'll see a lot of right. Yeah, that's just another option. Other options I have considered as well is Dragons like the left edge, so 2 Piloto. Yeah, will he get that many tries a game? Don't know. Jason Saab against RTS. If RTS is cutting in to cover cover Garrick, just feeds the ball. We know how quick he is, so off a kick he could just get right up there, pluck it out the air, and be away for a 90-yarder. So we do have those options as well. I'm still fading Zach Lomax at the moment. I just don't really like him at centre at the moment right now. They're the best options, other than the ones that we've spoken about, I believe. But yeah, I think they're all possible pod plays.
Yeah, I like that call there of Saab, but I think for me, I would be a little bit nervous loading up on all of those Manly players. So I'm probably going to fade Saab. And I guess someone else that we haven't talked about that might be on people's thoughts is someone like Dom Young. We saw him have a really good season last year, but I just can't go anywhere near any of the Roosters' attack. They looked out of sorts. The halves didn't know what they were doing, and they were just getting absolutely smacked through the middle by that big Broncos pack. And I don't think that's going to really change in this game, up against the Panthers there. And the reason I love To'o so much is because, where he's lining up in the same spot that Cobbo scored a hat-trick last week, and he almost probably had a fourth try there as well. So we know the Panthers love going through that right, through Cleary, Edwards, etc. So I think To'o potentially load him up for 2 or potentially even 3 tries. That wouldn't be, out of the question there for Brian To'o. So I think, my toss-up at the moment is Sharp and Marju in one spot and then To'o in the other. And I might just, hedge my bets there and play Sharp and Marju across a couple of competitions and then, To'o makes up the rest across there. Alrighty, let's jump across to our fullbacks. And I feel like, again, there's probably an opportunity for almost go-to lock-in players at every position from forwards, halves down through to our backs. And I feel like Turbo and Ponga are probably going to be those 2 lock-in players most weeks that we look at. We should pump the brakes. We have said a couple of times there's only been one round, but they both look really fit. They both look keen to be involved. They want to get their hands on the footy, and we know what kind of game breakers they are. So I think for me, those are the 2 players that I will be loading up on in the fullback. So I'll have one of them on the field and then one on the bench. So the question will be, who is that third fullback that you're probably going to play on your bench? JT, do you want to kick us off?
I have Edwards ranked as my second fullback this week. So there's your answer, really. There's not much between those 3, to be fair. I just like the matchup against the Roosters. That's all it comes down to, a bit more than the Seagulls over the Warriors. Warriors 2-week rest back at home. Roosters are away after absolute drumming. Yeah, we'll see what Trent Robinson's got up his sleeve, but just with the personnel they're missing from last week, I do like Edwards a bit more than Turbo this week.
Yep. And Tom, where are you heading with your third player?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm actually going the exact same direction. I think Dylan Edwards last week, he had the try assist, but that was his only score involvement in a game where, it was a bit tighter with the Sharks, although they ended up winning it in the end. We saw a very good competitive game throughout. With the matchup this week, though, he had 200 metres ran for last game. I just feel like we can just expect that sort of play, but just a little bit elevated. He had 51 fantasy points in a game where he didn't really feel like he was needed to dominate. And maybe he's not needed to dominate again this round against the Roosters, but I think there's plenty of opportunity for him to get involved. And for many of the reasons of why we want to start Lucas this round and Garrick, and we're looking at these defenses, I think the people behind in that spine that are their playmakers are also going to be the beneficiaries of these really good matchups. So I'm pretty confident with the other 2 that you said as well. They were the first 2 that came to mind for sure. And Dylan Edwards took out that third spot for me. But I'll be interested to hear if you're going elsewhere.
Yeah, I potentially am. And maybe you've both convinced me to just stick with Edwards because, as I've said plenty of times on the show, I like to play my fantasy sports pretty safe. And Edwards is definitely that safe player. We know what we're going to get from him each and every week. Like you said, 200 plus run meters, a handful of tackles, really limited demerits. And then he's got that attacking upside if required as well, which you touched on. So, you've kind of convinced me to go back to my safety net and just play the safe player.
Don't do it, man.
I did have that other player in Walsh that I just don't know what it is. Last week, he only scored 46 points, and that was with a try. So that's a little bit concerning in a team that scored 50 points against the Roosters. He didn't have a huge involvement, but he probably didn't need to either.
He had the one big run from memory, right? He had the one big play, and that sort of felt like that was it from Walshy.
Yeah. And like I said, he probably didn't need to. And I feel like maybe here against a Raiders team that, is looking a little bit better, he's going to be more involved and he's going to want his hands on the ball a little bit more. And look, we've talked about as well not going to historical data and using that because teams change and defensive structures, attacking structures change. But since moving to the Broncos in 2023, Reece Walsh has played the Raiders 3 times. He scored an average of 67 points. He's averaged 1 try, 1 try assist, 2 line breaks, 9 tackle breaks, 180 run meters, and 100 kicking meters against the Raiders. So that's just in
Stu,
3 games. So
Raiders beat down.
So similar to Fogarty getting up for a
Wow.
Broncos game, I feel like Walshy gets up for a Raiders game. And I'm taking a bit of a risk, and I'm going to play Reece Walsh this week, I think, in my starter squad, and then I will probably distribute Edwards elsewhere as well.
I'll tell you what, clearly Walshy takes that very personally, that Fogarty likes to get up against his team. But we've got a couple of questions here. You'll probably pull it up in a second, but we've got a couple people asking about Asako, and we might, JT, why do you think people are big on Asako this round? And we know we spoke about the wingers before and some of the pairings. What would you be looking at here if you're going to start him?
I'm still unsure what the Dolphins are this season, to be fair. They're under a new coach. They do have the same combination down that right edge. I've just looked into it when I saw the questions pop up. It is actually pretty reading against the Knights. He averaged 59 points against them last season. So he doesn't mind that matchup. However, one of them wasn't when they did have Best and Marju down that left edge. That's what it is at the moment. But with Herbie inside him, I see the upside, especially being a kicker. And I still don't know what team the Knights are going to be this season. I expected the Dolphins to probably get up in Sydney last week. Yes, it was a messed around a week with the cyclone and all that. But they could really gel and come back together and put on a show. It wouldn't surprise me. And if that's the narrative people are running with, I think he's a great shout. But it really depends on how you see this game playing out. If you think the Dolphins are going to be well up for it, I think he can be definitely considered as a starting option.
I've got to say, though, in that, I think that their left side, if I'm not mistaken, was very disappointing. Tupou had multiple chances to get over. They just didn't quite gel properly on that side. Yeah. But that side with Herbie and Asako just seemed to be humming. It was like a well-oiled machine, and they were just churning it out and working. Just really good synergy. But, Dill, what's your thoughts, mate? JT hopped in there.
Yeah, I kind of am fading, any attacking players at the moment from the Dolphins. We obviously saw Herbie have a pretty disappointing game for his standards. Asako played pretty well. I'm just a little bit concerned by the whole team overall from an eye test perspective, and the moving on of the coach Wayne Bennett, and then what that is doing to the team there. And I probably want to see a little bit more before I go to Asako. But in saying that, we know what we're going to get from him as well. He loves to score a couple of tries. He can kick a few goals. So I wouldn't put it past anyone to want to play Asako, and he played pretty well. So for me, I'm just waiting and want to see a little bit more from that side in terms of attack. As you said, there was a lot of ball and play and a lot of tackles being made, and it got a bit scrappy at the end, and there wasn't a lot of fluency at times. So I just want to see a little bit more before I go to people like Asako and Farnworth again, because we know they were so damaging last season.
What was that stat about teams moving on from Wayne Bennett? Like, apparently it's not very good. History will say that there's definitely a regression coming from a team that moves on.
Yeah, and I know, Christian Wolf there has taken over, and he was the assistant coach, under Wayne Bennett. But, we know Wayne Bennett's a completely different human and what he can do to a side. So, it's a wait and watch. Sorry, JT, we jumped in there. What were you going to say, mate?
I just remember last week, we saw Munro go off. Was it collarbone, I think it was, on the left edge for the Bunnies, which then opened up the right edge more so for the Dolphins. Asako did have the one try by that stage anyway, but Jaden Sullivan, did he get a point in that 40 minutes? He got pretty close to zero. Will it be a better match? I just think it's a better matchup for the Knights down that edge if they stay fit. Will they be up against that sort of opposition? I'm just unsure, really. No qualms with anybody taking him. He's definitely a pod option, in my opinion, this week. I just think he's going to come up against a bit stiffer opposition.
And just for reference, Jaden Sullivan, I think you were talking about, he scored negative 1.8 GDS points. So, you were right. He was close to zero.
On the wrong side.
He didn't score well. And just quickly, a little comment here from Callum Stone. I'm not quite sure who he is on GDS, but he's saying that Stewie looks a bit different tonight. That is right. We've replaced him with much better looking blokes. Alrighty, so that is pretty much our sides there. Again, feel free to let us know who you are playing and who you are sitting in the comments. And just a quick look, we have sent through Stewie's team as well, just to look at with mine. So those are our players in the starter squads. And while we're just looking at those, Tom, do you want to touch on the GDS Cup and why the starter squads are so important?
Yes, absolutely. So this year we're debuting a new feature on GameDay Squad, and it's being called the GDS Cup. And what it is, it's going to be an in-season tournament where we see coaches qualify to participate in a head-to-head competition where it'll essentially be the king of the hill. It'll be the last squad standing. So what will happen is you're going to play off over the next, I think it's 2 rounds, and we're going to get the score, your seasonal score over those 2 rounds. And if you make, I think it's the top 500 and I can't remember the exact number, sorry, but it's all on Instagram if you want to see the specific details. But I guess I'll explain the concept is that if you qualify, then what will happen is you'll get assigned a matchup for the first week. And for every round that you can survive the tournament and keep going up the rankings in the GDS Cup, you will continue to be rewarded for doing so. So we don't know who you're going to get in terms of a matchup. It's all going to be randomly allocated. Hopefully, you don't run into a Titan like Fire Breathers in round 1. Otherwise, good luck to you. I salute. But if you can knock him off, then I think you get a GOAT status, honestly. So it's going to be a bunch of fun. Just by submitting a starter squad over the next couple of rounds, you're automatically going to be entered into the chance to be in it. And then, of course, if you qualify, then you're automatically, that score that you keep getting in your starter squad is the one that's going to be used in your head-to-head matchup. So there's nothing extra that you need to do. Just set your starter squad and get ready for what I think is going to be an awesome competition and with a lot of bragging rights on the line and some sweet rewards, mind you. I think there's some really, really good ones later on if you can survive.
Yeah, and I'm really keen on those rewards. The top prize there, if you are the last coach standing, the last team standing, I do believe it might be a all-star card, or could it be a prize card? We'll have to wait and see. And just on that is the top 512 coaches after round 3, I believe. So you were pretty close. And I think Michael Cozzy there, I think he's Cozzy's posse over on the Discord and in GDS. He does not want to be matched up against Fez.
Oh, he doesn't. Oh, sorry. I thought he wanted the smoke.
He didn't. But Hal also agrees that Fez is the number 1 seed for sure. So let's not discount Fez and his GOAT status as well.
Let's not sleep on Son of Chops either.
Oh,
come on.
Mate, Son of Chops. Unreal.
I think anyone
I do not
sees
want to get him.
That name, I think it's just GG. Good night.
Alrighty, as always, boys, you're in for an absolute treat here on the GameDay Squad Fantasy Bros show. We do our Bro Down Showdown, and last week, or for the Vegas round, because last week Cyclone Alfred had other ideas about our show. I picked Yo, Hines, and Edwards up against Stewie's Adam Fanua, Blake, Cleary, and Chance Nickel Clockstad, and he came out with the victory. So everyone that comments on our video with who they think are going to win the Bro Down Showdown each week goes into the draw to win some of the cards that we pull live on the show. So if you pick Stu in that Bro Down Showdown, it means you are in the chance to win some of the cards that we pull here. So I'm just going to switch over now to the Wheel of Names and have a look at who was involved in that. So we've got Tom H, Matt Pierce, Jack Gnarly, and Mel's Misfits there who commented on Stu winning. So let's spin that wheel and see who wins.
Who wins the Bro Down Showdown?
Alrighty, and it is Matty Pierce. Matt Pierce, well done, mate. Let's jump over, and I have pre-opened a pack, a 3-player unique. Now, usually what would happen, because Stu is 1-2-1, he would get 2 of the cards and we would give 1 away to the viewers. So that's Matty Pierce. But I reckon today, how about we go and we just give all 3 away? Because Stewie's not here, he can't claim them. Let's give all 3 away to Matty Pierce. What do you reckon, boys?
Works for me.
Sounds great to me, mate.
Alrighty, let's reveal the cards. So we have a Sam Hughes Platinum Damien Cook platinum there,
Cookie.
and then a Connor Tracy platinum. We didn't get to talk about Connor Tracy, but he had a massive game in round one. He definitely could be someone that you potentially might be looking at to play. So I think that's an awesome pack there. So Matty Pierce, make sure that you hit us up on the Discord or through Instagram so that you can collect that prize. Alrighty, on to
here quickly.
Yeah, definitely.
Before you hit this Bro Down Showdown and get into it, I've been given confirmation that the winner of the GDS Cup, so the number one, the top dog, as they would say, is going to win a prize card and will be going at the end of the prize card draft. So our normal competitions from champion down to starter will get their selections first. And I think they will have the 33rd or 30, whatever, I think it's 31st. Pick in that draft. So you will actually win a prize card just for potentially winning the GDS Cup, and all you've got to do is set a squad. So I saw a couple comments there saying, is it a prize card or not? Because I know how prestigious getting one is. It actually is. So make sure, if there's never been a better reason to set a starter squad, so make sure you're doing it for this round, but take it away with your Pro Down Showdown.
And before I do that, though, the importance of a prize card should not be understated. A prize card is a 1.4 multiplier, but it is at a cheaper salary cap cost so that you can use that in something like a classic or a challenger and use it as a silver card, but it is worth a diamond. So that is a massive opportunity for one player from the starter competition to be able to win. So definitely get involved. If you haven't signed up yet, plenty of time to do so. Can use a bunch of codes to get all those packs and get those bronze cards. All right, as you said, into Bro Down Showdown for this week. Stewie has sent his through. It is my picks of Yo, Hines, and Walsh up against his of Payne Haas, Cleary, and Turbo. So if you think Stewie is going to win, make sure you comment Stewie in the YouTube video. If you think that
let me go there.
I am, you boys can't win. Maybe you can. If you think I'm going to win and take out head-to-head Bro Down Showdown, then comment deal in the YouTube comments and or on Facebook. JT, who do you think is going to take it out this week?
Stewie. Main reason for me is I think Yo might get some rest if it goes the way last Roosters game went. So we might see him get 65, 67 minutes. Yeah, 10 to 15 minute break at the end if they're on top. So that's the main reason for that.
Yeah,
ladies and gentlemen,
and Tom?
I'm no expert, but I'm a man of logic and reason. And my reason will be vote Stu this one. You're going to want to get a spot on that wheel. Get Stu in the chat. I'm sorry.
Hey, I've got one supporter. I've got Sean Walcott. He's supporting me. Unreal. Thanks, Sean. I might just slide you a pack for that, mate. I teed that up, so well done. Yeah, it looks like everyone in the chat is going with Stewie this week. We'll see.
Skip says Stewie by a mile.
By a mile. All right, let's wait and see. All righty, boys. That is it. Thank you so much for hopping on and joining us and filling in for Stu, who couldn't be here. I'm sure he really appreciates it, as do I. And your insight is always valid and valuable here. Thanks to everyone who commented as well on the chat. Look, our next live show will be the round 3 live show. It'll be Wednesday, the 19th of March at 7 AEST. Make sure you comment who your Bro Down Showdown winner will be so that you can get involved in the giveaway. Remember as well, Matty Pierce, you have won, so make sure you hit us up on Discord or Instagram. JT, Tom, thank you so much for joining. Any final words for this round from you boys?
Oh, good luck, and hopefully we see the Dragons and Wars get their first win for the season.
Yeah, I like that. And Tom?
Love it. Thanks so much for having us on. Firstly, the debut here with the Rugby League show with the Fantasy Bros and you, JT. So cheers. What a game we're going to be treated to tomorrow night. A great fantasy outing. I'm sure so many people are going to have plenty of players. It was a pleasure. And for all the winners, make sure you hit up the boys, get your rewards, and get your squad set for round 2.
Unreal. Thank you very much. Have a good one, guys. We'll see you soon.
Not